the call to action is just let everybody know they have an option.
Hello, and welcome to the Negative Space podcast presented by the Anthem Awards. I'm Patricia McLoughlin, the Anthem Awards General Manager, and also your host. The Anthem Awards is centered around our 7 main cause areas, and today we'll be talking about health and what I believe to be one of the most important public health issues facing women in the United States. Following the fall of Roe v. Wade, over 12 states have enacted a total abortion ban, and another 6 at this point in time have extreme restrictions around abortion. And right now, our fight for bodily autonomy and the right to choose is just heating up, and the path forward is a bit uncertain, to say the least. Given where we're at, I really wanted to spotlight the life-saving work of Plan C, an organization transforming access to abortion in the U.S. by normalizing and providing information around the self-directed option of abortion pills by mail. I'm so excited now to be joined by Anthem and Webby Award winner and one of the original co-founders of Plan C, Francine Coeytaux, a women's health advocate, a public health specialist, and honestly an icon. Francine, welcome to the Negative Space.
Thank you, Patricia. Very happy to be here. In community, we need it.
Yes, we definitely do at this point in time. And I mean, to really get us started here, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and really share what inspired you to enter into this space?
Sure. I've been working for decades in my career in reproductive health, justice, access to family planning, to fertility control methods, to safe abortion internationally. And I had been working internationally. I and my partner, one of the other co-directors of Plan C, Elisa Wells, had been working in Africa doing evaluations of different projects. And we knew what was happening internationally, and we also knew what was happening here in our country 10 years ago. This is when we started Plan C. Basically, we knew that abortion pills were very available and very safe, and that were being mailed and made available in very rural parts of Africa, everywhere. And yet in our country, they were so restricted. And in 2014, when we came back from one of these trips, was the first time that Texas had been shut down for abortion because laws were being put in the books that said abortion was not okay, and we had to wait for it to get to the Supreme Court before we had access again. We just thought, this is ridiculous. We need to let people know in the U.S. that there are these amazing, safe pills that could be used and that could just completely transform access to a very needed procedure. So that was the beginning of, we decided, oh my goodness, we've got to share the word. And I met the other co-director, Amy Merrill, who was a whiz at social media and websites. And she agreed to help set up a website to start just spreading the word about the fact that these pills existed internationally.
And to just let people know that might not be fully aware, what is a medical abortion? And can you speak a little bit to how safe of an option this is for people?
Yes. So the term medical abortion is a term that is used to say that you're using medications, you're using pills instead of having a procedure. So there's sort of like 2 kinds of abortions. You can do them by pills, or you can go into a clinic and have a procedure done to you. So medication abortion is a term that's used for anyone that has used pills. We've actually made so much progress in getting people in the US to understand about medication abortion that now actually 60% of all abortions in this country are now done with pills, are medical abortions, and 20% of the abortions that are being done with medication abortion are being done by pills being mailed to people. The transformative nature of being able to just get the pills in the hands of the people who need them and then allow them to decide, manage, do have control over whether they want to use them, how they use them, when they use them, is in the hands of the people who need them.
Definitely. And so earlier in your career, I know that you were also a part of the team that got Plan B widely accessible in pharmacies. And I'm so curious what that journey looked like. And also, I'm sure you learned a ton during that experience. What from that is still really ringing true today and helpful as we now start this next fight?
Oh, well, thank you for that question. I mean, honestly, we've been fighting for decades to have more access to contraceptive methods, to all methods, to especially methods that really put the power of decision making in the hands of the women or the people who need them, instead of having to go through a doctor. Today, we are still fighting all those fights to try to get better access to morning after pill, the emergency contraception, Plan B, however you want to call it. We worked very, very hard for decades to get it over the counter, to let people know that existed, to have access to it, to reduce the cost, all the kinds of things that we had to do to make it real. We then realized we needed to do for medication abortion pills, which meant working with all sorts of different players. It meant working with the FDA. It meant working with doctors. It meant working with midwives. It meant working with the public. It meant working with communications people, freeing these pills from a system that had really restricted them and required you to get to a very special doctor to get them, to actually now being where we are today, which is amazing, which is you can go online and you can order them and you can have a provider ship them to you, mail them to you, give you backup information, help you use them in the privacy of your own home everywhere in the United States. No matter what state you live in, everywhere, this is happening, despite the fact that, as you said, many, many states have now made abortion illegal or have restricted access severely. But meanwhile, these pills are getting into these states, and that's the news we have to share. It's very good news. It's amazing because it's taken a tremendous amount of work by a lot of different players and intrepid people who are willing to step up and do things against threats, and also to make sure that people have access to these safe, very safe, to your question pointed out, extremely safe and extremely effective pills.
And I know as well, you guys have a self-titled movie and documentary titled Plan C, and that really captures so much of your work and shows this process. And this was also recognized by the Webby Awards and Anthem Awards that I have to call out. But I'm so curious to hear from you how that film has really impacted your efforts and the different ways that it has helped move Plan C's movement forward.
Yes. So that film was not a film that we went out to do. It was the amazing Tracy Jost Tragos, an amazing documentary filmmaker, who realized, actually, when Kavanaugh got seated on the Supreme Court, that things were going to go south, and that she was worried. And so she actually reached out to me on LinkedIn, had read about Plan C, and reached out to me and asked me if she could begin documenting our work, to do something with the film that she was putting together. Honestly, I look back and I had no idea what saying yes to such an opportunity meant. I mean, her vision, her ability, her realization that there was going to be a story to be told. Remember, again, she started this, I want to say 2018 or 2019, and didn't know that Roe was going to fall, but just knew that things were getting bad for access, and was intrigued by what we were doing. So the documentary is literally a documentary film, not made by us, but by this amazing filmmaker, who uses me essentially as a narrator to follow me across the country as we are working with all these different people who are willing to step up and make this available to folks during a time in which there's a lot of laws being passed and a lot of fear about what you can and can't do. It really shows both the really amazing, intrepid nature of the providers who are willing to step up and say, okay, yeah, this I'll do what I need to do. Anyway, when Roe fell, she all of a sudden realized, oh gosh, I better pull this film together. She did pull it together, and it is what won the Anthem Award and won the Emmy Award, and she won at Sundance. It's an amazing film. It doesn't even show the second part of what happened, and probably more parts will happen of the journey. But it ends with the moment at which we know that we've lost Roe. And at that point in the story is when we all of a sudden realize that there were states that could pass laws that would help and shield doctors who lived in the blue states, in the liberal states, to do what they were doing, which was to mail and help people in the states that were criminalizing abortion. So that's been the latest attempt, which is to work with lawyers and work with the states to essentially promise to give support to the providers who have been doing what some states claim is illegal. Texas, for one, has just recently thrown more laws saying that these providers are providing illegally. But in fact, these providers are adhering to the laws of their states. They're doing everything with the backup of every regulatory, everything. It's as legal and as mainstream as can be. The part that is driving the red states angry is that they're willing to ship and mail and help the people who live in the states that have lost access to other kinds of services.
And I think something that was shown really beautifully through the movie are just the different avenues that your team has been using to get the word out there. Because at its heart, what Plan C is an information organization and just ensuring that everyone has what they need to make the decisions best for them. So what are some of those things that have really worked well? Is it boots on the ground on college campuses? Are these ad buys? All of these different things that you're doing, where really have you seen the greatest success?
Absolutely. And the film is a perfect example. I didn't really answer your question fully, which is it's been an amazing tool to start getting the word out. I recently had the Attorney General of California come to me at an event and literally said to me, "Are you the woman in the film?" And I was like, "Oh my goodness." And he said, "Oh yes, my wife and I watched it. We really thank you for all you're doing." And I'm like, that's exactly what the film was there for, right? Was to get attention, bring attention to people who are in positions of power to help. So film, art, we've used a lot of art, social media. In the film, you will see parts. The billboard that we went into Texas with as they were passing that crazy law that basically was saying anybody who would aiding and abetting in Texas would be fined $10,000. We went in and aided and abetted by going in with a billboard, a huge, beautiful billboard, mobile billboard, in which we drove around West Texas in the biggest abortion desert in the country to all these universities and had a huge billboard that basically said, missed your period, there's a pill for that, go to plancpills.org. So there are billboards, we're using billboards, we're working with community groups in all this, every community that we can get our toe in. It's all done in partnership, as was done in partnership with folks in Texas. And they're using things like radio ads, they're using TikTok. In Florida recently, we just had 3 beautiful wall murals painted during the Art Fest in Miami. The other thing that you see in the film that has been hugely successful and is still ongoing and is the sticker campaign.
I know it was big in bathrooms, changing tables, like all of these areas where women's eyes typically are.
And the boots on the ground are people. it's not us. It's people who want to spread the word who are getting these and literally pasting them everywhere they can. It was 5 million a while back of these stickers all over the country in the places where we believe people most need to know, might not know otherwise. And it sends them to the website of Plan C. And the point of the website of Plan C is to let people know what their options are. Plan C is just, as you said, an information campaign. A lot of work goes into keeping that website current. It's done state by state. So when you go on the website, it says you want to find pills, what state do you live in? There's a drop-down menu. If it says, if you're in Alabama, you drop down to Alabama and literally tells you all the different ways you can access abortions, including medication abortions, including pills to be mailed to you in Alabama. And that is huge because right now, those states are trying to scare people into believing they have no options except maybe to get out of state, go to New York or go to California or something like that. And so we're trying really hard to break through that and to let people know, no, there are many more options than that. The website also lists a lot of new, literally online providers, people who will ship you the safe pills, and they're not medical providers, they're not providers, they're just online pill sellers that what we call mystery shop them. In other words, we double check, like a little bit like Consumer Reports. We go in to make sure that these are real, that they will send them to you and send the right pills, and that they're not a scam and they're not going to take your money. We do all that testing before they show up on our website. And so that's a whole other category of access. And then there's a third category of access, of which there are now a number of people who are willing to help community networks, we call them, community networks who will get you the pills and give you information if you reach out to them. So yeah, it's amazing. There was an article in The Guardian 2 weeks ago that was very interesting. It was basically talking about the state legislature of Texas, who, by the way, meets 3 months out of every 2 years, and the rest of the time they don't meet. So they're meeting right now, and they have a bunch of laws that they're trying to put in again to scare everyone into saying that these pills it's illegal to do what we're doing. You cannot ship pills into Texas, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They're desperately trying to stop this because they know now that the flow of these pills into their state is so huge that there is now data coming out that there have been more abortions in Texas since we lost Roe than before. So despite all these laws that have made it illegal to have an abortion in Texas, more people are getting abortions.
And, it is just such a scary thing when you see so many stories coming out of women going to the ER and being denied help until they're in a certain state or different things like that, where you can't blame someone for needing to take additional steps and wanting to protect themselves, because it's extremely scary to be a woman of childbearing age in this environment, and especially if you're living within a red state.
Absolutely. And the way we feel is, again, it's our choice. It's our right to make decisions about ourselves.
So what does it actually look like to protect reproductive rights? And as we already discussed a little bit, pregnant people nationwide are taking a lot of unique routes to help secure abortions and tapping into these out-of-state networks and working alongside shield laws to have providers help them, and so many other methods that we've already talked about. But how can providers continue to provide this vital service, especially maintaining equal access for people with different intersectional identities across race and gender and ability? And how can we all be better advocates to make sure that everyone is getting what they need? And especially now, as we see additional things coming down on the trans community from the incoming administration, what can we be doing to just really continue supporting some of these groups?
The most important thing is is to be sharing information, really honestly. There's the side of the provision, and that is being done by the providers I've talked about, and letting people know who's out there doing that. But the piece that really needs to do, that we as people can do, is to spread the information, share the information. So for example, we don't believe that even the providers, who are the ones that get called, let's say you're in Texas and you're pregnant and you're scared and you want to know, what do I do? Usually they're trying to call the providers that used to be there to provide abortions. And one of the things that would be so great is if those providers would let people know that one option is to self-manage your abortion, instead of sending people to abortion clinics in California, New Mexico, wherever they're sending them. There isn't enough acknowledgement of the fact that this is a true alternative option that is as safe and effective and should be the choice of the person. Still, the medical system, or the old reproductive health providers are still very much focused on trying to get you to a clinic. And so one of the things that needs to change is for people to understand that this should be on the continuum of options, and that the self-managing your abortion at home can be done safely, and would be appreciated to be done safely with the help of the providers telling you how to go about getting the pills and who to turn to if you have questions. There's a long ways to go still on that. But the other bit, to the communities that you're talking to, the communities who've been usually very disenfranchised and have lack of access, is letting them know that this self-management of your care is modern, it's safe, it's in many ways a gold standard, that you can have such a safe procedure at home without having to go to a clinic, is the concept that we still haven't really done enough work on. Because there's still very much a belief that the only reason abortions are safe is because they are done by a doctor or a medical professional. So just the concept of the fact that this technology exists that is very, very safe, very effective, and hearing from the folks who have had them mailed to them and done it home, and hearing them say, I'm always going to do it this way. I love the fact that I could be with my partner, that I didn't have to travel, that I didn't have to get childcare. We're beginning to have more data, more researchers who are doing the qualitative work to show how appreciative people are about that. So back to what we can do, really sharing information in any way that you feel clear. If you're a provider or a professional, there are ways you can share information within your community to reassure people that everyone should know that this is an option. Not only telling them we'll get you money to go to California and get an abortion, but also say, and by the way, if you ever need it again, you need to know that you could have done this at home. Changing that narrative would be a huge, huge step. I tell everybody, even if you're not pregnant, put them in your medicine cabinet, have them ready if and when you need them, or hand them to friends. I mean, these are pills that need to be destigmatized. And so I literally carry pills in my purse, but I'm who I am, right? I'm the co-founder of Plancina, white-haired, and live in California, so I can do what I do, but it really works. I mean, I talk to Uber drivers, they're driving me to the airport, and tell them what I do, and they, the number of them that you think, oh my God, should I be saying this to this older man who is going to think he's going to drop me off? And instead he says, oh my gosh, my daughter needs to know about this. This is amazing. That is something that we all can do, and we all should be doing. Letting people know they have that option, and letting them know where to get the information, so the decision to use is in their hands.
What do you happen to know the shelf life of those pills if someone did want to just have them readily available for themselves?
Yes, that's a very common question. It's 2 years for one of the, so it's the packet is made up of two different pills, and the shortest one is a 2-year shelf life. And again, probably longer than that because shelf lives are usually longer than what's on the thing. So in answer to your question, 2 years, but honestly, you know, 2 years is a long time.
Exactly. And if you're in a state where they do have an extremely restrictive ban, or there are conversations happening where something like that might come down, it really is just a security blanket for yourself and your community to know that you do have an option readily available. And if something happens, you're prepared.
Exactly.
And I think there's a lot of power in that.
There is a lot of power in that. And honestly, it also is a way of pushing, questioning the law. So for example, in the states that have a 6-week ban, meaning that you can only get an abortion if you get in there before 6 weeks of past your last menstrual period, getting them in advance, what are you doing illegal? There is no date yet. You can argue. Now in all of this, I need to point out, which I think is obvious to everybody, is that there are people who are much more vulnerable to being criminalized for using these than I am, for sure. But the fear and the concerns in many of the very restricted states about whether or not they could get criminalized for using these pills is very, very rampant. And one of the things that I think we can also do a lot more work on is reassuring people, explaining to people how many people have managed to do this in their red states, in their communities, and nothing has happened to them. And the fact that many of these laws, in fact, don't criminalize the person who is using the pills. And so if you did get attacked, you would have legal recourse. And we've spent a lot of time working with legal folks, pro bono, ready to go. On our website are a lot of the resources for legal aid should anybody need it. So yeah, the issue of what the risk you're taking by doing this is a more of a risk of being turned in for doing it. And we've seen, in fact, some of these new laws that Texas is trying to pass right now are trying to the male partners, to turn in their girlfriends or their friends who they find out used the pills, and offering to pay them for doing that, pay them for turning in the girlfriends. I mean, it's nasty out there.
And I mean, along that same thought as well, I feel like there's a lot of talk around, should people be using unencrypted servers if they're talking about this, and should they be kind of tracking their steps, or even when people talk about period tracking apps and things like that. I'm curious, is that a lot of smoke that we're seeing from the government's trying to scare people, or are these steps that people really should be taking if they are in a state with an abortion ban?
Very good question. Very key question. I do think that it is a lot of fear mongering, but I think it is also very, very wise and smart to be careful with your digital security. I know that Plan C, I'm no longer a co-director at Plan C. I've been a strategic advisor for a couple of years now. But I know that my colleagues have been spending a lot of time on digital security, making sure that anybody who comes to the Plan C website is not going to get discovered by it, because they came to the Plan C website. But that is very, very complicated and very difficult because it depends on what you're using to come into the website as well as what the website. So we've done everything we can to protect people from using the website, but we can't help if people, and most people don't think about it, use their phones and call and talk And yes, you've heard, in fact, in the film, there's a quote by one of our colleagues and close partners who's with If, When, How, the legal folks, who says that, really you have to be very careful, because that's the most of the people that they see that do get criminalized are there because some close person heard them talking about it, or even the partner, back to this attempt to try to get the partners to turn in the women. I mean, yes, you want to be careful, and digital is one way that you can be discovered. But again, reminding you that in the cases in which people have been prosecuted, most of the cases have been dropped because they're not doing anything illegal. You have a right to self-manage your care, and you have a right to use these pills. There is, in fact, no law that says that a woman or a person who needs them cannot use these pills. And that's probably why we haven't seen more cases in the media. When you think of the hundreds of thousands, I mean, that's where we are, hundreds of thousands of people in the red states who have received these pills. I'm talking about the illegal states since Roe fell. That's how many are getting helped. So I think the fact that we haven't seen more cases is part of it, partly because they don't really stand in court.
Yeah, definitely. And so another question I had here is, obviously the title of this podcast is The Negative Space. And what we're really trying in a lot of this to do is to really uncover what some of these unseen challenges are within advocacy work. So I'm curious, what really is a bigger hidden obstacle that you guys are facing in this work at this time that maybe you're camouflaging well, but something that you just want people to be aware of that has come up quite often in this?
The biggest challenge I find is how to stay safe, but still visible. So back to the bit about like digital security, we've only gotten to where we are by finding people who are willing to push the envelope and push the legal envelope, push the envelope from the get-go. Our team, Plan C, my two co-directors and I, and then the rest of the team, have had to continue to do what we're doing despite friends and lawyers and advisors telling us, you can't do this. You're going to get, your house is going to get, they're going to come after you. It's illegal. You can't do this. We still did it. And in fact, we were right. It is our right to share information. It is a First Amendment right. And in fact, we're still up doing it. And the fact that we have to constantly stand up to bigger and bigger threats. I mean, the threats are worse and worse legally. So, for example, we used to have on our Plan C website all our names proudly of who we were and where we came from and what we were doing. And, decisions have been made now that we should take our names down, our personal names. We need to protect ourselves, kind of thing. I'm, like I said, I'm not in the leadership, I'm not making decisions, and I understand. But it's an example of the fact that there's a downside to having taken our names down. Anybody who's worried about whether or not Plan C is up and who are we and is this for real, having our names and who we were and, what I'm doing with you here today is a big part of how successful we've gotten, in my opinion. And clamping down on that is and saying, okay, now I'm going to do it anonymously so I can protect myself, takes away some of the power of doing what we're doing. So, for example, in December, the Attorney General of Texas, he sued one of the providers that's mailing pills into Texas. And he named her by name. And he's going after her and he wants to sue her for damages and saying what she's doing is illegal and all this kind of stuff. I mean, it was the kind of threat everybody's been worried about, is that you personally are going to get, sued and everything. Again, that's in the film. That's beautifully documented how scared and how intrepid these providers are to decide, despite how scared I am, I'm going to do it because it's the right thing to do. That was an example of the fact that, thank goodness, these providers are so intrepid, and they're living in a state that's shielded. They believe in the fact that what they're doing is legal, et cetera, et cetera, and they're deciding to continue. They didn't shut down. Now, some did. Some decided, oh, this is getting too hot. I'm not going to do this anymore. But as long as we have some doing it and we can serve the country, that is the huge part. But this is an example of how they're ratcheting up the fears, the threats. So to your question, I feel like the negative space part is, and that's you, if you watch the film, that's my MO. It's like, no, these are bullies. And so I really believe in that strategy. And that is a hard strategy to continue as they ramp up the threats.
No, and it really is just such a crazy point in history where, especially, I mean, you see it online every day. Anytime you go on to any social media platform, these nameless, faceless people with a lot of threats and really coming for folks that are just doing such important work where you don't always know where to turn. So it is a hard kind of decision to make. And obviously, we're so grateful that you're here with us today and having this conversation and putting a face behind this work and really just being proud. And I think that's something that we're extremely grateful for here.
Thank you. And I speak for all these folks that are doing this. I think that's how they all feel. They're passionate. They feel that what's right. And given where we are today with our new administration, who's going the opposite direction, it's going to be even more important than ever for those who really have an ethical and a passionate something to share, that we're not going to be afraid to share it, and that we aren't going to kowtow and go quiet because we know we're going to get, fingers pointed at, or worse, even try to put us in jail.
Yeah. And so as we kind of start wrapping things up here at the Anthem Awards, we celebrate all of our winners, and kind of our thing here are these one sentence call to action speeches. And I would love to hear from you what one reminder or vision or mission that you would like to share with our audience, and kind of this one sentence takeaway that people can have from this.
Oh boy, this reminds me of the awards where we had 5 words, and those words were, it feels like a revolution. And then I added my own 5 words were available in all 50 states. And I held up the pills to let everybody know that this is available in all 50 states. The Plan C mission, which is to put the power of I get emotional and I can't find my words anymore, but just put the power of self-care and self-help and self-empowerment directly in the hands of those who need it. And so the call to action is just let everybody know they have an option.
Definitely. And I feel like a perfect note coming off of that is, I would love just a final reminder from everyone, if they're looking to access Plan C services, or if they're looking to get stickers, if they want to get involved in any type of way, where can they learn more?
So I say plancpills.org. That is our website. That is the heart. That is all the work. If anything, we have too much on that website. You can look for resources. You can look for history. You can look for medical articles, you name it, besides the fact that it also tells you what's available in your state. The plancpills.org is an amazing tool for anybody, for people who are in the communities, all the way up to doctors who are thinking, hey, can I help? It's a resource for everybody. And that's it, plancpills.org. Thank you.
Awesome. And thank you so much for being a part of this project and joining me today. I am so excited to be having this conversation, and I know our community is going to love this.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share some good news during this time when we can all use a little bit of good news.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please follow, rate, like, and subscribe wherever you are watching or listening. The 5th Annual Anthem Awards will be opening for entries on Tuesday, April 8th. If your work or passion is having an impact, we would love to see it entered this year. For more information about the Anthem Awards, you can visit us online at anthemawards.com and at Anthem Awards on social. Thank you to our production and editorial team, including Sugebo, Jordana, Jarrett, and Kate Mishkin. Thank you again for listening. I'm Patricia McLoughlin, and this was The Negative Space.